Hello, my coders, developers, and other technically inclined people that have found this video. If you have, I'm assuming that means you are searching for how to prepare for your upcoming interview, or maybe you're just thinking about the whole interview process because you want to change your career for total compensation or to explore other options. So, in this, I'm going to tell you what you should be doing right now to prepare for that, what you should be doing a few days beforehand, and what you should be doing the day of. So, right now, you should really be using this time to kind of reflect on the work that you've done in the past few years uh, at your current job, your internships, any meaningful contributions you've done to open source, uh, big school projects if you're just coming out of college. And as you're thinking about that, figure out a way you can communicate it in the STAR format. Being able to use the STAR format will help demonstrate that you really understand what your work encompasses. So what that is your situation, the task, the action, and the result. So what was the business challenge that came up? What was your responsibility in this? What did you do to resolve the situation? And what was the measurable outcome? So that's your result. So if you just say I coded a pretty website that people came and left likes on, that's not really measurable. Like, why did you code this website? What was the gain? Instead of that example, I'm going to read what I wrote in my blog here. So I observed my team's software was running inefficiently after it grew to a larger user base. I investigated the part of the code that was gathering all the products for our main homepage and realized it was using an inefficient algorithm to parse the results based on the customer's recent viewing history. I refactored this code to use an n-log-n algorithm instead of the existing algorithm, which I analyzed to be ON squared. This example demonstrates that you realized that there was a problem that needed addressing. It shows exactly what you did. You investigated the code that was gathering all the products. It showed your action. You refactored this code to use an n-log-n algorithm. It shows the understanding of basic computer science principles. And then it gives the measurable outcome with the 30% increase in the homepage that you used a benchmark for. If you just randomly say like a 30% increase, yeah, that's good, but as an interviewer, I feel like you may just be pulling that number out of a hat. All right, so now I'm going to ask 10 questions that frequently come up during interviews. Feel free to pause it after the question and think about how you would answer this using the STAR format. So, tell me about a project you are most proud of and what was your specific contribution to that? Tell me about a time you went above and beyond a customer's expectations. How have you previously managed and deployed your code? What improvements have you made to your team's previous daily work? Uh, how did you change the way they thought about a specific problem? Have you ever had a disagreement with a coworker that caused delays to a deadline? How did you reach a resolution? Why do you want to work here? And no, the answer to this one is not to make a lot of money. Don't answer that. Honestly, please don't. Describe a time where you've made a mistake. What kind of setbacks did this cause? How did you overcome it? What did you learn from this? Describe your dream job. And again, no, your dream job is not sitting on a beach drinking mimosas. That probably is a dream job, but I don't think it's something you can do. Give me an example of a time where you've been disappointed in your work. You can see a theme with some of these questions. They really want you to be kind of vocally self critical. Like, be able to address your mistakes, hold yourself accountable for that, and what you did to overcome it. So, being able to be proactive about a problem that you saw uh, is really a strong quality in candidates. So, definitely think back on times where you could have improved something and just come up with an example around that because most likely that's going to come up. With most technical interviews, after you get through the question part, the talky bits, uh, usually you'll be asked to do a coding problem. Sometimes this will be through like an interactive web session. A lot of times it'll be through whiteboard. So if you're not comfortable with whiteboards and kind of like coding and talking at the same time, Go to Walgreens, buy a $5 whiteboard, hang it up on your refrigerator. Every time you walk by it, just write a few lines of code. As you do this every day, it'll get a little easier, and then by the time you get to your interview, you'll be a natural. But to help prepare for these coding problems, I highly recommend the Cracking the Coding Interview book. Links down below. I read through that before my interview 4 years ago. In addition to that book, create a goal for yourself to finish one coding problem a day leading up to your interview. So if your interview is 3 weeks from now, that's 21 coding problems. During the interview, you might be doing 2 to 4. It'll just feel really natural for you at that point in time. So the different platforms I recommend for that: HackerRank, LeetCoder, Project Euler. Project Euler is not as coding specific, but it's kind of like math oriented to just get you in the problem solving mindset. So when you're at the whiteboard, don't just like freeze up and don't say anything. That's probably the worst thing you can do. So what you want to do is state your assumptions, think through the edge cases that come up from the inputs, describe what your initial thinking is for solving the problem, and again, remember to keep talking through your solution. Verbalize any questions that come up. If you have a specific question, like maybe you were intentionally not given enough information, maybe the problem is create an algorithm that finds all the duplicates in an array. So if that's all you're given, maybe you can state, is the array sorted? Is there an integer limit? What size restrictions do we have on the array? Are we concerned with CPU usage? Like, are we on an embedded board? Are we concerned with memory usage? Because for this specific problem, you don't need a ton of memory, but someone's you do. So again, it's better to ask more questions than less questions. As long as that question isn't like, are we getting tacos after this? Like, be focused at the interview at least. After you've asked all your questions, just implement your brute force solution. At the end of this interview, it's really good to have working code than to have something that's overly engineered, doesn't really work, the thinking is only partly done. So basically just get something that shows you like to code. And as you are coding, like, write clean code, but feel free to state that you're using like shorthand variable names. Like, hi, Mr. Interviewer. Normally when I code, I like to have very descriptive variable names and methods so that my code documents itself. But for the purpose of the interview, I'm going to be using shorthand variable names, like S equals my string. Instead of saying, this string represents the value that the customer inputs when ordering something. Again, you wouldn't really use that as a variable name, but you get the point. If during your interview you reach a stumbling point, feel free to write some example arrays on the side of the whiteboard, and then imagine that your array is the input into your method, and kind of explain how your algorithm will work on your array. And through that process, sometimes you can end up seeing any kind of sticking points and then work through that. So again, if you get to that point during your interview, you're not sure how to progress, just step back a little bit, write down some mock inputs, walk it through your function, and then visualize what's going on. So if you've reached a working solution, now's the time where you can talk about what can you optimize. Maybe your brute force solution was n squared, and maybe if you sort the array that's being inputted, maybe now you can rewrite your algorithm into n log n. Also, can you do your array manipulation in place and conserve on actual memory usage? This might not seem like a big deal if your function's only inputting 20 entries, but once that reaches 2 million, in the case of a large scale application, any inefficiencies in your code will definitely stand out. Being able to imagine what that is, communicate it, and then potentially rewrite your code to be more optimal, if you do that, that'll definitely win you some points. Alright, so now that we've implemented our code, it's working, we've talked through edge cases, we've discussed what can be optimized. Now, is our code that clean and testable? Are we taking dependencies on things that are really hard to test? Can we use a dependency injection or inversion of control or anything? If you don't know what that is, feel free to look that up. That will also help you for your interview to understand basic object-oriented principles and solid design. Um, so can we refactor anything to be injected into the method that would make it more testable? And then we can call that out during the interview as well. And then, does your code need any kind of error handling? If we're expecting a string and someone passes us an integer, what do we do? So lastly, is it important to notify anyone if your code breaks? Um, how are we gathering metrics? Do we need to record how many times this has been ran? So we know if all of a sudden we have an average traffic pattern like this, and then the next day we see no traffic at all, then your team might be able to respond to this piece of code to notice like, hey, we checked in something that threw an exception and now it doesn't work anymore. This probably isn't that applicable during the average coding question that'll come up, but if you're doing like some kind of system design or something, then that would definitely apply more and be something worth calling out. All right, so now that you know the basics of the behavior questions and how to prepare for the coding questions, um, you know, answering questions in front of the mirror, thinking about the work that you've done and what your contributions were and what results that work generated. And you've also been working on your LeetCode. And while working on LeetCode, you've been openly communicating what your assumptions are. Um, and now you're feeling a little more confident. Now's the time when you should reach out to people for mock interviews. Don't ask your mom or your girlfriend or your boyfriend or your dad to give you those because maybe they don't know tech that well. If your dad is a CIO at some tech firm, you can ask him. But in most cases, don't ask someone that doesn't know tech to ask you the questions because they're not going to know how to evaluate you. Also, ask someone that you can trust that their feedback will be real. All right, so you've been doing all this preparation. Your interview is tomorrow. Congratulations. The stress might be really high right now. You should also be really excited. I mean, obviously, you took this interview, so you're excited for this job, and this should be something to be excited about. This is your last chance to prepare. Assuming you haven't procrastinated at this point in time, this should just be another typical practice day of going through a couple more coding problems, going through a couple more star format answers and example questions. And, remember to eat well, stay relaxed, and get a good night's sleep. That might be the hardest thing to do if you are really excited, but try not to eat any caffeine past 3 p.m. that day because that will affect your ability to sleep. Get a workout in. That will help you sleep a little better. Get a full, restful 7 to 8 hours, whatever you need. And also, it's been shown that if you can envision yourself doing something, normally it helps you be able to do that situation more when you actually come across it. So, as a meditation exercise, like close your eyes, imagine you're in a room with an interviewer. They are saying the questions that you've been preparing for, and you are answering them exactly as you prepared. Envision yourself with confidence, smiling, good energy, and just reflect on that. So when that situation actually comes, you'll be a little more relaxed. So let's say that your interview is in Silicon Valley for some startup. Get to the airport on time. Try to book your tickets in advance so you have time to get comfortable with the area that you're in. Drive to the site in advance because you might run into traffic. Traffic patterns aren't always the same in different cities. So just get a feel for your route. Be better yet if you can get something really close and take a shuttle. What else? If you're driving across a state, maybe book a hotel in advance so that way you're not rushed and you don't have that extra travel time fatiguing you. I did drive 3 hours before my interview, and that wasn't really a good idea. By the end, I was just pretty exhausted and just rambling. So get a hotel close to the site of where you're taking your interview. Like, this is your career. I'm assuming this interview will boost your compensation, your salary. So if you're spending $150 for a hotel, I mean, even if you're spending $400 for a nice hotel, just that experience will really kind of energize you and make you feel more comfortable with the situation. So get that nice hotel, get familiar with the site that you're going to. All right, and lastly, guys, the day of your interview, ensure you wake up at a good time to be able to shower, get a good breakfast, maybe exercise a little bit just to get your positive endorphins running. All right, and now you've done all the morning prep. You've gotten to the site. You found your room. You're sitting there. Your first interview has just came in. Remember to relax, stay calm. This is what you prepared for. Another piece of advice is just treat this interview as a typical meeting. Don't get too stressed out about it. It's just you and another person just chatting about the things you've done. All right, so now that the interview is done, this may be the hardest time where you have to wait patiently for them to give you your feedback. Even if it comes back with a no, don't take that as a too hard of a reflection on yourself. Maybe you've got some growing to do, some learning. Everyone has a chance to be able to improve. So maybe for that specific role, you just weren't exactly what they were looking for. Like if this team is looking for a distributed engineer with expertise and various like cloud things, and you come from an embedded background, and all your examples you gave were very embedded focused. Maybe you just weren't an exact match there. But again, always remember to stay positive because that team may be in contact with some embedded people that would love to have someone with your skill set. But maybe you're just like a newer web application developer, but this team is looking for a full stack developer, someone with knowledge on how to scale systems with hundreds of hosts and millions of users and gigabytes of data. So you might not be there yet, but with time and learning, you will be there. So don't get discouraged. Just keep preparing, studying, bettering yourself, growing. That's what everyone's here for. If you've made it this far, please give a like and a subscribe. I'll be putting together more of these videos for career growth, software development advice. Check out the blog below. Thank you. Good luck in your interview. Have a nice day.